Okay, so ready to dive into this whole world of the surveillance state. It's kind of creepy how pervasive it really is.
Yeah, it's something most people don't even realize. It's like we're swimming in it.
Exactly. And you gave me these excerpts from Means of Control by Byron. Really fascinating stuff.
Oh yeah, that's a great book. Eye-opening for sure.
It really exposes how everyday things from those late night dating app swipes to even something as insignificant as your car's tire pressure can become part of this whole data machine.
It is kind of wild when you think about it. Like all this technology that was intended for, I don't know, targeted advertising or whatever, can be totally repurposed for something else entirely, like tracking individuals.
Right. Talk about unintended consequences. It's like we don't even grasp what these technologies can really be used for when they first pop up.
Yeah, we're so quick to embrace the convenience or the novelty.
It's like that saying, right? If you're not paying for the product, you are the product. But in this case, even if you are paying, you might still be the product.
Exactly. And Tao really gets into that with this story about Mike Yeagley. He was an intelligence contractor.
Oh, yeah, I remember that part. What did he do again?
Well, he showed how location data from apps like Grindr, the dating app,
Yeah.
he showed how that data could be used to track people's movements.
Okay, that's a little creepy, not gonna lie. Even if it's an app with millions of users, it still feels like an invasion of privacy.
That's a thing about data. Once it's out there, it can be used in ways we never imagined. And it's not just everyday people Yeagley was tracking either. He even tracked government employees.
No way. Seriously, so even government employees who you'd think would be more aware of these things are vulnerable?
It just goes to show that no one is immune in this digital age. We all leave these digital trails wherever we go. And then you've got data brokers who collect and sell this information.
Data brokers, those are the middlemen of the information age, right? Buying and selling our digital footprints.
Exactly. They're like these massive clearinghouses of information, and they're not exactly picky about who they sell to either.
It's a little scary to think about, what kind of information do they even have on us?
More than you'd probably like to know. Everything from your online purchases to your browsing history to your physical location.
I've heard of companies like Axiom. They're one of the big players, right?
Yeah, Axiom is huge. They started out in marketing, figuring out who to target with which ads. But after 9/11, their business model took a sharp turn.
I'm guessing the government suddenly got very interested in all the data they were sitting on.
You got it. Suddenly, this data wasn't just about selling products. It was about national security, counterterrorism, identifying potential threats.
Wow. So Axiom just handed over their entire database to the government.
Well, it's a bit more complicated than that. There was this Axiom executive named Charles Morgan. After 9/11, he led this project to create what he called a bad guys database.
A bad guys database. That sounds intense. What was in it?
They were using Axiom's data to try and identify potential terrorists. They were analyzing things like credit card debt, address history, that kind of stuff.
Hold on. They were trying to predict terrorism based on someone's credit card debt. That sounds like something straight out of Minority Report.
Right. It does make you wonder about the criteria they were using and the potential for errors, this whole idea of pre-crime. But it highlights the government's growing interest in collecting and analyzing vast amounts of data.
And it's not just Axiom. Remember that whole controversy about the Total Information Awareness Program? TIA?
Oh, yeah, spearheaded by John Poindexter. That was a whole thing.
That was some seriously controversial stuff, right? It was like this massive database of, everything.
Pretty much. The idea was to connect the dots using all this data to identify terrorists before they could actually do anything.
Sounds good in theory, but I can see why people were freaking out.
Oh, yeah. There was huge public outcry about privacy violations, and the program was officially shut down.
Well, that's good, right? Problem solved.
Not so fast. Tao argues that TIA never really went away. It just went underground, changed its name, morphed into other programs with different names. There was this program at the NSA called Basketball that was basically TIA 2.0.
So even with all the public pushback, the government still found a way to keep collecting data.
Yeah.
That's unsettling. What's even more concerning is that it's not just classified data anymore, right?
Right. Now it's all about open source intelligence, or OSINT.
OSINT. That sounds familiar, but I can't quite place it.
It's basically information that is publicly available online. Social media posts, traffic camera footage, even those tweets about your morning commute, all of that can be valuable to intelligence agencies.
I get that they would use social media posts, like if someone's openly talking about, terrorist activity or whatever. But traffic cameras, Really?
It all adds to the picture. They can use that data to track people's movements, build profiles, understand patterns, and it's not always as straightforward as you might think.
How so?
Well, the book talks about this guy, Sean Gorman. He was an academic researching internet infrastructure.
Internet infrastructure, like the physical cables and stuff?
Exactly, the physical systems that make the internet work. Gorman was researching vulnerabilities in those systems.
Okay, that makes sense. Like from a security standpoint, you'd want to know about those vulnerabilities.
Right. But at first, Gorman's research was flagged as a security threat. Like he was seen as potentially helping the bad guys.
Seriously?
Yeah.
Just for researching how the internet works?
It's more nuanced than that. His research highlighted vulnerabilities, sensitive information, but then they realized that this kind of open source information could also be incredibly useful to the intelligence community.
So they were like, wait a minute, this guy's onto something.
Exactly, they flipped the script. And it just goes to show how something that seems purely academic can suddenly become a matter of national security.
That is kind of wild. It's like data is this weird gray area where something can be both a threat and a tool at the same time.
Exactly. And it's all about who's using that data and for what purpose.
So we've got government agencies collecting data on their own citizens. But it's not just limited to one country, right?
Right. It gets even more complicated when you start talking about international cooperation. Tao talks about the system called SUNet.
SUNet. Never heard of it. What, is it some kind of secret internet?
It's not exactly a secret, but most people don't know about it. It was created to share open source intelligence with international partners.
So like a global network of intelligence sharing? That's kind of intense.
Yeah, it's basically a massive data hub that allows governments to access and analyze all sorts of information from all over the world.
Wow. Okay, so we've gone from tracking suspected terrorists using credit card data to monitoring social media posts to sharing intelligence on a global scale.
And we're just getting started.
So it's like this whole other level of surveillance happening, right? Like it's not just one country watching its own citizens anymore. It's this whole interconnected web of information sharing.
Right. And it's not just governments either. Private companies are deeply involved in this whole data collection game. Like, have you heard of Babel Street?
Babel Street. Rings a bell, but I can't quite place it.
They're a company that provides access to tons of social media data.
Okay, like a lot of data.
We're talking massive amounts. Think like a fire hose of tweets, Instagram posts, Facebook updates, all of it. And they organize it so it's easily searchable and analyzable.
So basically it's like Google, but for social media. Except instead of regular people using it, it's like governments and corporations.
You got it. And one of their biggest clients is law enforcement.
What do they use it for? Like tracking down criminals or something?
Among other things, they have this tool called LocateX that lets law enforcement track people based on their location data.
Wait, so they're tracking people through their social media. How is that even legal?
That's the debate, right? In a lot of cases, this kind of tracking is happening without a warrant. Seriously. I mean, I get that they're trying to catch criminals and stuff, but tracking people without a warrant? That seems like a slippery slope.
It's a gray area legally, for sure.
Yeah.
Law enforcement argues that it's a vital tool, helps them solve crimes more quickly. But privacy advocates are obviously concerned. They say it's a huge invasion of privacy.
Yeah, I can see both sides of it. But it still feels kind of icky. Like, where do we draw the line?
That's the million-dollar question. And it gets even more complicated when you consider that a lot of these apps we use every day are collecting and selling our data too. Like, remember those drunk mode apps?
Oh yeah, those were popular a few years back. My friends and I used to use them in college. Good times.
Well, it turns out those apps weren't just preventing embarrassing late-night texts. They were also collecting and selling user data.
Seriously.
Good.
Even to, like, defense contractors and stuff.
It's crazy, right? The app that's supposed to protect you from making bad decisions when you've had a few too many is secretly selling your information to the highest bidder. Talk about irony. Yeah, that's pretty messed up. It makes you wonder what other apps are doing stuff like that behind our backs.
Right, and it highlights this blurring of lines between the public and private sector when it comes to data. Like, take Premise, for example.
Premise. Another one of these data companies.
Yeah, but they started out doing something totally different. They were collecting data for development purposes. Like, they'd track pricing information in developing countries, things like that.
So like helping NGOs and researchers.
Exactly. But then they shifted gears. Started supporting U.S. intelligence efforts.
No way. For real.
The book even talks about their work in Ukraine, providing data that could be used for intelligence gathering.
Wow. From tracking the price of rice to providing intel in a war zone? That's quite a jump.
Talk about a pivot. And to make things even weirder, Premise also did work for Philip Morris, you know, the cigarette company.
Hold on. We've gone from drunk dialing apps to intelligence gathering to big tobacco. This is getting out of control.
It's all connected. Data is the common thread. Everyone wants a piece of it. And they're willing to use it for all sorts of things.
It's like that old saying, information is power. Except in this case, it's like data is power, and not everyone's using that power for good.
Exactly. And it's not always easy to tell who's doing what with our data. It's all happening behind the scenes.
So it's like this whole hidden world of data collection and surveillance that we're all caught up in.
Pretty much. And it's only going to get more complex as technology evolves.
So what can we even do about it?
That's the big question. And that's what we'll get into in the next part of our deep dive.
I mean, I get it, data is valuable, but this is getting ridiculous. Like at this point, it feels like there's no escaping it.
It can feel that way for sure, especially when you realize how much data we're generating every day without even thinking about it.
So is there anything we can even do about it?
Yeah.
Or are we just supposed to accept that our every move is being tracked and analyzed?
Well, Tao doesn't think it's hopeless. He talks about how it's not about like unplugging from technology completely, but like being smarter about how we use it, being more aware of the trade-offs we're making.
Okay, so what can we do? I'm all ears. Give me some actionable advice here.
Well, for starters, encryption is huge. Using encrypted messaging apps like Signal or WhatsApp instead of regular texting.
Right, I've heard of those. Supposed to be more secure, right?
Exactly. And using a VPN when you're browsing online, that can help mask your IP address and encrypt your internet traffic.
VPN.
Right.
I need to get on that. What else?
And of course, having strong, unique passwords for all your accounts, that goes without saying. But it's amazing how many people still use the same weak password for everything.
Yeah, gotta love a good password manager. Okay, so encryption passwords. What about all this data that companies are collecting on us?
Well, that's where things get a little trickier. But there are some laws emerging that give you more control over your data. Like in California, they have the CCPA, the California Consumer Privacy Act.
Right, I've heard of that. It's supposed to be one of the strongest privacy laws in the country.
It gives residents more control over what data companies can collect on them and how they can use it.
So there's hope. Maybe other states will follow suit.
There's definitely a growing movement towards stronger data privacy regulations.
Good. Because honestly, this whole thing is exhausting. Like, I'm all for using technology to make our lives easier and safer, but it feels like we've gone too far in the other direction.
I hear you. It's all about finding that balance, right? Between innovation and privacy, between convenience and control, and that's not always easy.
No, it's not. But I think the first step is just being aware of the problem. Like, once you understand how all these systems work, you can start making more informed decisions.
Absolutely. Knowledge is power. And the more we know about how our data is being collected and used, the better equipped we'll be to protect ourselves.
Well said. Well, this has been a fascinating and slightly terrifying deep dive into the world of data and surveillance. I don't know about you, but I'm definitely going to be more mindful of my digital footprint from now on.
Me too. And remember, it's an ongoing conversation. As technology evolves, so too will the threats to our privacy. So it's important to stay informed and to keep asking questions.
Couldn't agree more. And on that note, we'll leave you with this final thought. If something as seemingly insignificant as your car's tire pressure can be used for surveillance, what does that say about the future of privacy in a world that's becoming increasingly data-driven?
It's a question worth pondering, and one that we'll likely be grappling with for years to come.
Well said. Thanks for joining us on this journey into the heart of the data machine.
Anytime. Always happy to geek out about this stuff, even if it is a little creepy sometimes.
Until next time, stay curious, stay informed, and most importantly, stay vigilant.